Hello and welcome back to another retro gaming video. I'm going to make this short. We are looking at Apogee Games remasters. There had been quite a few over the last few years and I'm going to show you if they're good, bad and if you should get them or if you can just ignore them. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We'll start with one of the Apogee games I've got the most nostalgia for, Secret Agent. It's this neat little puzzle platformer with the tiny sprites that are so adorable. It starts out easy enough but gets pretty tricky later on, and there are just a ton of different mechanics in the game that keep things interesting. The game got its remaster in 2021 by Emberheart Games, which is called Secret Agent HD. The remaster faithfully recreates the art style of the original, but with a bit more detail and colors. It also adds 60:9 support, additional levels, additional difficulty levels, achievements and a level editor. The whole package is $6 on Steam, but it regularly gets heavily discounted to just a single dollar, so I would wait for that and then it's a real steal. This is a great remaster overall with everything you could wish for. Next on the list is Crystal Caves, which I would call a sister game to Secret Agent, as it uses the same engine and is pretty similar, although with a different settings and a few gameplay mechanics changes here and there. Instead of a secret agent, you are a spacefaring miner here that explores different planets and tries to collect gems to refuel the spaceship. Crystal Caves, being the earlier of the two games, is a bit simpler in its design, but it's still very charming. It also has the earlier remaster, releasing in 2020, but with all the same features as Secret Agent HD. In my opinion, the graphical glow-up is even a bit more noticeable in this one than in Secret Agent, as the original was a bit more plain. A lovingly recreation that is definitely worth your time and money. The next two games I wanted to talk about are absolute classics, Duke Nukem 1 and 2. And now you might wonder, what, there was a remaster of these games? Yes, but it's Evercade exclusive. If you've never heard of Evercade, it's an ecosystem of game consoles and handhelds with physical cartridges. The first two entries in the Duke Nukem series weren't first-person shooters, but run-and-guns, or action platformers if you so will. Duke Nukem 1 featured more basic EGA graphics and PC speaker sound, whereas the second game featured full VGA and Sound Blaster. That being said, many people still prefer the first one over the second game, and I can see why that's the case. The level design is just a bit more straightforward and the second game has a few too many traps to run into. That being said, I still like the second game a bit more because I think it has more attitude and I just like the graphics better. The remaster on first glance looks pretty much exactly the same as the original games. These remasters focused more on gameplay and quality of life improvements. You get 60:9 aspect ratio, a new HUD, some background music for the first game that didn't have that, but the biggest improvement is that the game is a lot less choppy and more smooth to play, as it's not any longer tile-based like the original game. Especially in the second game you can really appreciate the new aspect ratio because you can see farther ahead, which helps you avoid some of the more unfair traps in that game. I've played through both remasters and had a great time with it, which makes it even more disappointing that they are not available on PC. I bought the games together with a limited Atomic Edition of the Evercade console and just couldn't resist reselling the box for a hefty profit, so I too can't play these games anymore and had to use third-party footage here for this video. The next remaster on the list is something special for me. If you've watched my top 10 Apogee games video, you know that I adore Monster Bash, so getting a remaster in 2021 was really exciting to me. The original game has just so much charm and all that Halloween atmosphere, and I didn't even really know what Halloween was as a kid, as I grew up in Germany where that had not been a thing yet. It's a great playing and great looking platformer. So how does the remaster fare? Well, it's from Emberheart Games again, who have proven their love and craftsmanship, so it's a good one. A faithful recreation of the original with updated graphics, quality of life features and 60:9 aspect ratio. It doesn't add new levels, but you can create your own ones, which is great. The only issue I have with the game is I think that the original EGA graphics were just perfect, so even if the updated ones look very nice, I'd love to have the option to switch between both. And the comparisons in the trailer of the game made it seem like that's possible, so I was a bit disappointed when I found out that this was just done in editing. Other than that, I can wholeheartedly recommend the game, especially as this is also often discounted heavily and it's a real steal if you can get it for $1. If you're enjoying the video so far, why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel to never miss a future video about retro gaming and point-and-click adventures. Wacky Wheels was Apogee's take on bringing Mario Kart to the DOS PC, and it was a pretty successful one. Yes, the game lacks the polish of the original, but it's still a lot of fun to play. The main issue I have with the game is that it's limited to 15 or even 10 frames per second, making it a very choppy experience. So I was really excited when I learned about a remake in the works that would pretty likely fix that issue. As a disclaimer, I should mention that this remake is not available on Steam anymore, but you can get it completely for free on itch.io. Yes, the remake does run at a higher frame rate most of the time, but that's unfortunately where the improvements end. In all other regards, I have to say the game plays, looks and feels a lot worse than the original. There are some baffling design decisions and the technical quality is also lacking, with tons of bugs that I encountered during my rather short test session. It doesn't help that it also looks really bland and I much prefer the graphics from the original. My main gripe, besides the handling of the cards, is that this game is extremely random. It puts much more emphasis on the power-ups than the driving part. It almost makes no difference how well you drive, you just have to get lucky with power-ups and not getting hit by your enemy shots to win the race. You constantly get bombarded by your enemies and every time you lose control of your card, so it's often impossible to get into any kind of flow with the constant interruptions. In the original Wacky Wheels, or Mario Kart for that matter, the driving was still much more important and the power-ups just the cherry on top. So no, unfortunately, I can't recommend this remaster unless you're really curious, as you can at least download it for free. Well, the next Apogee game that got a remaster didn't even make it onto my top 10 list, and I know people were quite upset about that. But even though I played my fair share of it, what nowadays would be called a boomer shooter, I could never get into Rise of the Triad. The game is just confusing and bland to me, where the level design of Duke 3D made an attempt to recreate the real world, and even Doom had some corridors that could vaguely be in some sort of hellish space station. The levels in Rise of the Triad are just a bunch of random corridors. Nevertheless, there must be something there, so I'm not going to rant about the game any longer and talk about its remake instead. And that would be Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition, released in 2023 by the renowned Night Dive Studios. And what can I say? It looks like a very competent remaster of the original. The graphics are much more crisp and play in a higher resolution. Obviously you get 16:9 support, and they even threw in a whole new episode and a level editor. This really is a great package for everyone who could not get enough of the original game, and people seem to agree with this sitting at very positive on Steam right now. It's a bit more pricey at $20 or $5 on a discount, but that's to be expected and still very reasonable. So if you like the original more than I do, then why not get it on the next Steam sale? The last game on this list is what inspired me to make this whole video, Biomace. I did not play that game back as a kid, so I had no nostalgia for it when I tried it for the first time for the Apogee top 10 list. And I have to admit, I underestimated the game. It's actually pretty fun already in the original and should have made it to the list, but then again 10 games is really not much to choose from, and I felt I had the cool guy with the gun platformer already covered with Duke Nukem. But whereas those games do have quite a bit in common, Biomace can definitely stand on its own. The remaster just released at the end of last year by Regal Gameworks, and I might want to clear up a bit of confusion here. So there's this thing called the Regal engine, which allows you to play Duke Nukem 2 on modern machines in 60x9 if you provide the game files. This project was later the basis for the aforementioned Duke remasters on the Evercade. Biomace though runs in the so-called Snake engine made by the same developer. This time around, fortunately for us, the game landed on Steam and can be enjoyed by everyone. It shares a lot with the Duke remasters, but even builds upon it with a level editor and even an online level browser where the community can share their creations. Visually, this is my favorite remaster of them all. It really preserves the look of the original extremely well while adding some nice detail. It looks like the Biomace you remember, looking better than it actually did in your memory. But this remaster goes a lot farther than most of the others on the list. It not only adds smooth scrolling, like in the Duke remasters, but also a complete rebalance, making the game more fair and especially removing all dead ends from the original, where you could get stuck and not complete a level anymore. The collision detection was also improved, which makes the game feel really modern while still being true to its original. To me, Biomace Remasters is the new gold standard, and I hope to see more by the developer in the future. With $50 or a 10 on a discount, it's not the cheapest on the list, but I would still argue you get the most value for your money, so don't miss out. And this have been all the remasters I could find, and I'm really glad that Apogee is still kicking and licensing out their older IPs. I still hope that someday we will get a proper Wacky Wheels remaster, and then there's still a Raptor remaster somewhere on the horizon. So for once, even some old MS-DOS classics get some love in modern times. And with that, see ya!